Good afternoon. As noted, this is Brian McCarthy. I'm the president and founder of 327 Solutions. Just a real quick thanks to everybody that helped pull this together today. XtremeLabs, all of the presenters, certainly all of the attendees that are here to learn about different types of skilling and tooling opportunities within their business. I'm walking away with some new ideas and some new things in my bag. If anything, I hope to fill those shoes as well and share a little bit of knowledge with our team. So, without further ado, today we're going to explore the ideas around persistence as it relates to human capital and corporate performance. There's a multi-factor relationship where both employers and employees need to work together, along with external expertise and tools to bring persistence to life within their business environments. When there's a gelling of ideas and action as a team to create persistent training and culture, well, the outcomes, they can be extraordinary. As part of today's dialogue, we're going to set a baseline of what persistent training and culture is, share what leadership and employers can do by themselves and as a team to accelerate persistence, discuss why persistent training and culture is necessary moving into the future, share some of the pillars of success for persistent environments, and lastly, share a couple of takeaway ideas. An overarching idea today is that persistence doesn't have to be expensive nor time consuming. And with some innovation and use of in-house tools, you most likely already have, any team looking to advance its persistent environments and culture, well, they can do it better today and they can certainly do it better tomorrow with just a few steps. And then ultimately, our conclusion, I want to share some what I'll call the elephants in the room, two big ideas. One is environmental social governance, or ESG, and this relates to regulatory compliance. And the other part is supply chain risk management, or SCRM, things that we're hearing a lot about right now. So welcome to Persistent Training and Culture. Let's dig in. First of all, to discuss persistent training, let's have that baseline. What is persistent? What does it mean to be persistent? The Cambridge Dictionary summarizes persistent as lasting for a long time or difficult to get rid of. Most of us have heard that persistent in our daily lives, well, that's going to pay off. And if we are studying for degree or certification, it helps to be persistent in our studying habits to reach the expected outcome. Being persistent in our job or leadership roles is necessary for mission success and accelerates performance within our enterprises. An ounce of planning is worth a pound of cure, in case you haven't heard that one before. And to be persistent in our own lives, our jobs, our businesses, well, that pays dividends over a very, very long time. So as we move through today's discussion, remember that to be persistent is to last for a long time and be difficult to get rid of. A good personal life goal that should likely be adopted by most businesses as well. So if we think about human capital performance as it relates to training and skill development, we certainly want to have persistence in our careers. Employees want to be long-lasting and difficult to get rid of. We want training and competency development to be on a continuous improvement pathway, keeping us at the top of our game, valuable and, well, indispensable to the future of the business. The majority of workers look for employers that offer strong individual development plans, or IDPs, and or career tracking opportunities. Employees want to be valuable, heard, involved in their employer's mission as a natural relationship between the employer and the employee. As employees, however, we can also choose which organization we want to put our time and energy into. And of course, as employers, well, we can choose who to hire and who not to hire. So through the search process of finding an organization to work with, employees also seek to find an organization that values many of the same things that we do as individuals. These cultural views include finding an employer that may support certain holidays, social justice initiatives, diversity goals, and, well, a myriad of things these days that just a few years back were not even part of the expected equation. As younger generations get involved in the workforce, the focus on social issues and diversity have grown exponentially. And winning companies are listening and they're adapting. We as employees, we want to work with an organization that is progressive, building tomorrow, and focused on the good of humanity in the world, while also putting out an amazing software or widget. The expectation being placed on employers is ever growing right now. Employers today should be rolling out the red carpet to attract the highest caliber talent that they can, or risk an environment of higher turnover, lower innovation, siloed and protective leadership teams, and ultimately, I'll call that settling for number two. The issue here is that number two is not a long-term position to be in as an employee or an employer. One attracts and develops the other, so make sure that your organization is telling the right story to the right people. How does persistent training and culture differ for employers? Well, as organizations are founded, grown, and directed in certain ways, along with this, a culture is born and it's also created. Leadership has a profound impact on organizational culture, as the overall success and scalability of an enterprise is related. Organizational culture is very broad and fully encompassing of whether a company attracts the right people and whether the right people and or the right talent is attracted to the company, and ultimately whether that organization is going to succeed or fail. Here's where we need to understand the importance of an organization's culture and how this can attract the right people to build persistent training and persistent culture that thrives today, and as we move into tomorrow as well. However, the massive amount of change thrust on the small businesses and large throughout the COVID-19 pandemic has put new culture, missions, social, and ultimately what an organization feels like into the digital spaces and realm on full display. The idea of change took on new meaning last year as employers navigated our first global pandemic with a 100% work from home scenario. Risk leadership of enterprise orgs, they likely had maybe a 20 or a 50% natural disaster work from home policy on file, but was the world ever ready for everybody to be home in less than a week's time? So change is still the name of the game today, as we find out that the employee engagement grew throughout the pandemic, which is some research by Gallup. Things like employees are getting more feedback. Engagement among hybrid employees has improved. Well, all of those things were resonating with me. And today, a majority of job seekers now want 100% work from home and or at least a hybrid office model. So attracting the top talent became a reflection of an organization's online persona. Work from home, unlimited PTO, and an understanding of social justice causes quickly became part of the talent attraction equation, and notably the talent retention approach. There's no going back to the way that things were just 18 months ago. We have innovated beyond this, and top talent moved the needle aggressively. Retaining this talent is much more than just competitive wages. Just last week, a leading technical architect gave me a call and told me about how his employer gave all developers a 15% bump in salary to prevent headhunting and reduce turnover. But you know what? It's going to take more than money alone. With generational turnover, we are seeing a significant upswing in the expected behavior of a business to include culture, ongoing training provider, leadership, and newer environmental and social missions, which foster an environment of progressive culture, inclusivity, and diversity. Companies that will be and remain competitive throughout the 21st century will listen to their employees, create the environment that socially connected employees want, adapt to change in the marketplace, and become part of the larger picture that is emerging from the pandemic. Now on fast forward. For a business to scale throughout the 21st century, a business must be powered by the people and create a learning culture of continuous improvement. Employees want more than a job. They want a career, a mission, a home, a family, both at work and at home, and to improve the world for tomorrow. Are employers going to take note? And are they going to take these steps? Will they create this environment? Leading teams have already done so, and they have a massive competitive advantage right now, with the best talent on board or coming on board, attracted by the best talent. Having the right people attracts the same, while the second tier, well, that attracts the same as well. So when we put the interest of the employees and the employers next to one another, this scenario is not really new, but it's changing at the fastest rate that I've seen. Employees want to continuously improve, and so do employers. Well, that's pretty static. Employees want a social mission along with a job. Well, employers better make that happen. Employees research companies prior to applying for positions, and having top talent on board is going to empower and attract more top talent. You better be looking at the right people. Employees are looking at the biggest impact on the world, and employers, well, they must adopt this holistic view of what a job is. Employees are seeking diversity, inclusivity in different working environments, and employers, well, they must socialize their inclusive and diversity goals. Employees, they want to be heard and valued, and employers, well, they need to create this environment or ultimately suffer the consequences. So in order to thrive in the 21st century, employers are demanding persistent training and cultural environments, which are fluid, ever-changing, and always in a state of innovation. Leading employers are listening, and top talent, well, they're looking at those firms. So why is persistent training and culture necessary? Well, they're inclusive to one another. One can't exist without the other. Employees have a set of expectations, as do employers, but the best organizations see this competitive advantage and empower that ecosystem. The best companies are serious about recruiting, retaining, developing, and allowing their talent to innovate. Let me stress that, allowing their talent to innovate, allowing people that you've hired and entrusted to do their job, but also to do their job better than you could have ever thought that they could do their job. The best employees won't settle for a job at a firm without that social mission that they can reflect with. This means that organizations have to roll out programs that align to today's demands. Persistent training and culture supports humans as a competitive advantage, and this includes meeting talent where and how they want to perform and work. A persistent training environment attracts the best and allows for that talent to continuously improve and empowers each person throughout the entire employer and employee relationship. So persistent training and culture, it's really a two-way street. They're relying on one another. Some of the elements that ultimately are needed to make a persistent training and culture work is number one, hey, executive leadership and buy-in. Let's get some funding. Nothing's going to move unless your leadership has bought in. And of course, these actions are funded. A shift to a learning as a culture, no longer just being a training division within a business, but being a learning culture within a business, really helping people from every single avenue access what they need. IDPs as unique as each person within the business. A blended skilling stack, which includes information access resources from multiple areas to include things like training, coaching, mentoring, mobile, digital books, etc. A well-designed competency program that allows each employee a clear career track, which remains agile as they go through their development and mentoring and coaching processes. And along with all of the above, persistent training and culture also requires excellent partners, thought leadership, and execution. So what are some of the ideas that we touched on today? Well, persistent training is an expectation for employees, no longer a nice to have. Individuals are looking for knowledge on demand, training as they go, strong career pathing, and individual development plans that help empower individual career goals to the broader construct of the employee and employee relationship. And this, of course, today includes social and environmental justice. Persistent training is a requirement for employers, and it cannot be ignored anymore. Along with a sharp increase in environmental and social causes, persistent training has become a requirement in order to keep up with the fastest changing digital environments that we've ever been in. A learning culture that is persistent will help dictate performance holistically within an organization, from attracting the right people to minimizing turnover, most importantly, maximizing job performance. Organizations can no longer just have a training department. They must have a learning organization. Top talent is always going to attract more top talent. So if you don't have the right people in your organization, you might wind up with more of the same. The classic employer and employee relationship has evolved into much more than just a W-2 and money. Employers are looking for an opportunity to express themselves and be part of something that is larger and bigger than themselves, impacting the world and their employer. One of the most notable things, and I would note that anybody, if you take anything away from this today, there's no particular definition that shows persistent training and culture is a huge undertaking. There's no particular definition that states you have to do it in a certain way. The idea of persistence in training and culture is ultimately defined by you and your business. Persistent training can start tomorrow by simply setting up a weekly text message that shares an idea throughout the entire organization. Persistent culture can start tomorrow by doing the same. So some of the things that we can do tomorrow, thought of the day, email, text, mobile field knowledge challenges. You probably have a learning management system, maybe Adobe Rise. Some of the Adobe products, some of the rapid e-learning tools. You're able to build gamified programs and just do some field competitions. Digitize legacy documentation and get it into a YouTube styled container. Think about how people learn at home, because that's how they want to learn at work as well. Offering one thing just one time per week literally that makes somebody stop, think, and reflect. That's huge. Identify mentor relationships and opportunity to knowledge share and accelerate team building. What are some of the things that you can do as a culture? Well, start a working group internally now. Focus on persistent culture. Recruit throughout the business in every aspect of the business. Based on some of the findings, work to get persistent culture funded and identify tools that can help accelerate persistent learning cultures. Things along the line of like Slack, anything that I would call is a continuous communication, continuous sharing platform. Ensure that there is training for each generation within your workforce, from the paperback books all the way to the microlearning and mobile. And start an apprenticeship program that will attract top talent, develop that talent, and ultimately create your own talent pipeline. So in the end, persistent training and culture are dynamically aligned. They're connected to one another. They're fluid, always changing, and well, it's expected. Organizations that adopt persistence will hold a vast competitive advantage over their competitors. Attracting talent with broader views. You don't need $1 million budget to get persistence moving forward, just some creativity and a desire to do better. Persistence will come into sharp focus as environmental, social, and other justice-based scenarios come into focus. Sending a text or email once a week is a step in the right direction. So basically, that's a wrap up. These are some of the ideas I wanted to share about persistent training and persistent culture and how that can exist within your business. Some of the things that are really driving what I would call persistent training design and development right now, I want to hop into. One in particular, and I noted I would share this earlier. If you don't know what environmental, social, and governance is, or ESG, it's something you're going to want to check out very, very soon. ESG is becoming more and more important to an organization's environmental, social, and overall governance reporting structures. We're actually watching the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, adopt ESG reporting as part of their annual financial performance reporting for publicly traded companies. What does this mean for a small business that's currently on NASDAQ? Well, quite simply, along with financial performance shareholder value reporting, we will now be required as part of the new ESG to report on your environmental impact as a business. Environmental impacts, well, that may include things like how much water you use in manufacturing, how many e-vehicles you have out in the field, what your carbon footprint is, where you identify and source your raw materials from, and what the environmental impact of your supply chain might look like. By the way, you're also going to have to look at the ESG of your entire supply chain, even if they're not a publicly traded company, because ESG is your responsibility. The risk is yours. Along with the environmental reporting, we're also going to see the idea of social reporting, which is going to become required underneath SEC annual guidelines. Social reporting may include things such as an organization's footprint in social justice causes. Some of these causes may be allowing an employee to voluntarily take a payday off in order to attend certain rallies and or different things as far as community activation. They may also show an organization's contributions to social justice causes. Social reporting will likely require an organization to report their board's diversity and how many minorities and people of color they employ, and track how that has improved year over year in comparison with an organization's competitors. Lastly, and this is the one that we think is the largest in the room, as part of governance reporting under ESG, we found that cybersecurity reporting will become a required report under ESG, now owned and run by the SEC. So what does this mean to an organization? Cyber hygiene and cleanliness is going to be put up against their competitors and force organizations to continuously improve. Along with reporting criteria, we will also see organizations like Moody's, a credit rating agency, come forward with new grading systems that help employees and investors identify an ESG score of an organization's impact on their community, their country, and the world as a whole. So how does ESG impact or perhaps represent persistence in culture and training? Well, quite simply, with things such as ESG, which are wholly systemic within an organization, with the power of the SEC overseeing it. We're going to be required to have nonstop training from the C office to the executive leadership to frontline workers and everybody that works within the business. ESG grading will be just as important as your financial reports, if not more so in the coming years. By requiring ESG reporting through the SEC, we're effectively enabling environmental, social, and governance as part of what was once just financial performance to now include corporate citizenship and global responsibility. And another really big one in the room right now, it's not going to come of any surprise, supply chain risk management. There's not been a shortage of ransomware attacks this year. And in fact, the United States has paid out over $1 trillion in ransomware payments since the beginning of just 2021. This is a startling amount of money and a startling statistic, but one that we hold near to our hearts as it impacts everything that we stand for as a nation. Many of the ransomware attacks that have occurred this year are due to third-party systems identified at and by hostile actors. What this means is even if your team has stellar cybersecurity and risk management and you're running an amazing office, that it's third-party software and or widget providers that are probably the largest risk profile that you really haven't even considered yet. Supply chain risk management, or SCRM, it represents the exchange of goods and services throughout our entire country and the entire world. To give you an understanding of the size and complexity involved, the Defense Industrial Base, or DIB, is made up of approximately 300,000 businesses in the United States alone. Each of these businesses creates software, sells commercial off-the-shelf products, delivers chips, bearings, engines, fuels, grease, and well, pretty much every single thing that keeps our economy moving and our national security in check. A well-known reason how SCRM impacts you can be tracked back to the Colonial Pipeline hack. It seems to be the one that most people know about, as it was very, very well shared within news constructs. But due to the ransomware malware that was inserted into a financial billing system, ransomware people, well, they were able to shut down 45% of the East Coast gasoline and jet fuel supply. Luckily, this only lasted a couple of days as Colonial wound up paying the ransom in order to decrypt the assets which were being held. However, what would have happened if Colonial Pipeline remained shut down for, 2 weeks or more? I truly don't want to know the answer to that question, but these possibilities keep popping up with much more frequency and with much more sophistication. SCRM matters today, as it's well understood that the supply chain is akin to our national security, business operations, and the supply chain is the thing that allows us to live life and to build businesses and to conduct commerce. Without a supply chain, we're all out of business. We can no longer sit by and allow the supply chain to operate with lax rules, lax oversight, and lax leadership. Well, this is evidenced by the recent executive orders put forth by President Biden, focused on critical infrastructure and supply chain resilience. So how is SCRM and ESG related, may you ask? Well, the answer is directly and indirectly. Environmental, social, and governance has a direct relation to the supply chain. And in particular, underneath the environmental and social constructs of ESG. If an organization is purchasing a computer chip from a third-party vendor under SCRM and ESG, they will soon be responsible for the entire downstream supply chain for that particular chip that impacts their business. Organizations are going to have to take a look at not just where the chip comes from, but all of the parts on the chip and accept that risk within their businesses. Is the cobalt ethically mined and free of child slavery out of the Democratic Republic of Congo? Is the chip itself secure and free of any embedded hardware from hostile nations? Are all of the companies that make up the chip on the up and up? This is systemic to every single organization from Lockheed Martin right down to 327 Solutions. And you don't even have to be in defense for your supply chain to impact you. SCRM is completely aligned with our national defense as a country. COVID taught us many things, in particular how vulnerable supply chains can be when fractured unexpectedly. When we put in a chip order, we have to know that those chips are going to arrive on time, are going to work properly, and are going to be free of any defect or forms of espionage that could be embedded. 327 Solutions is doing a whole bunch of work in SCRM and ESG. In particular, we're focusing on securing the Defense Industrial Base through some of the NIST programs. It's the National Institute of Standards and Technology guidance, and such as 800-171, some of the ADOTI Adaptive Acquisition Framework elements. And ultimately, we're trying to help people understand that supply chain is just not getting a box in the door. It is the lifeline to our business and our lives. By building an SCRM program that builds competency from the C office executive leadership to frontline workers, we're going to bring SCRM to the forefront of the fight against cyber and risk. So please let me know what questions you might have from today's dialogue. Thank you so much for letting me just share some ideas. And if anything, if you take anything away today, remember to create a persistent learning culture or a persistent training environment. It doesn't have to be a huge undertaking. You can literally start small and just move up the wheel. You have to get consensus, you have to have buy-in, you have to have the right team. And these are things that have always challenged businesses from day one. However, the world is, I would just say, melded. The world is together as one. We need to adapt as businesses and do a better job. Thank you very much.